Andreas, what's up, man?
Hey dude, what's going on? How you been?
Good. How's quarantine life?
Ooh, it's trying times over here. I'm going a little stir crazy, but yeah, we're getting by.
Nice, dude. Yeah, I feel like we got some tree snowboarding in. Do you feel like you got your tree snowboarding quota in for the
For the
year?
season. Ooh, man, that's a hard call. Because like normally I would get another month and a half of tree snowboarding. I'm one of those diehards that really makes it work, even in the slush, even in
Yeah,
the spotty snow. But then again, we got so many amazing tree runs in Japan. So I
yeah,
think like Japan kind of made up for the portion of the season that we're missing out on, because we did so much riding in Japan.
yeah. I think like quality, that was like top tier quality tree riding out there. So, here in Whistler, we get that tree riding. We may get a few days like that a week or a few days like that every 2 weeks, but we had some quality consistency out in Japan. So,
Yeah, not to mention just like much faster lift lines in Japan, So you could
yeah,
just go up and down and up and down, especially at Rizutsu, where it was like there was very little need to even hike.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Cool. So, yeah, we made the most of it. So yeah, just let everyone know who's joining in on the live chat too. If you guys haven't yet, check out Andreas's YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it down in the description. And I can see we're actually checking out the chat. Do you have the chat up? Can you see the chat? I guess you may not be able to see it, but I can see the live chat.
No, I can't see the live chat, but
No.
I'll just trust in your knowledgeable guidance.
All right. So yeah, towards the end of our hangout here, I can we'll answer a few questions. So if anyone is on here watching, definitely give us a few questions for Andreas about tree riding, and we'll do our best in Andreas's unlimited wisdom to answer some of them. But and for everyone watching too, make sure to like this video and subscribe to both channels. But yeah, man, I thought, yeah, we could have a good chat about tree snowboarding. I know that you're definitely one of the most diehard tree snowboarders that I've ever met. And there's lots of knowledge and that to be shared. We had a few really good days, like early in the season. I remember, I don't know, did you see the thumbnail from the video, the live chat video that I used for this one?
Oh no, I didn't even see it. What was it?
Oh yeah, so it was that day where you and I and TJ were up. It was kind of like a heavier pow day, but we had like those 3 runs first thing in the morning.
Oh yeah, and I took you through the stump zone.
Yeah,
Stumpy.
yeah, it was. Yeah, that was fun because our first couple runs weren't tree runs; they were just like pow runs on pow laps, and then the second, I think it was the second run, you took us over towards a gladed tree area, super early season trees. And it was really fun though. It was definitely an Andreas-esque run. But yeah,
Yeah, I believe the run that we went down was Watch Out.
over on Blacko Mountain, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good, but it was like very early season tree riding, like as early as you can possibly get it.
Yeah, it was like tree and bush riding.
Yeah, yeah. Trees, bushes, root. Yeah, there's some you're tapping your tail on tree root still. But that was a good one. What board were you riding that day? Do you remember?
I was riding last season's Orca, the blue one.
Oh yeah. So yeah, how do you think the Orchid does in the trees?
I would say that the Orca is like the most versatile board. Out of all the boards that I ride, it's the board that you can hop on for like both carving and for powder. So it
Yeah.
handled really well, the whole idea of being able to lean back onto the back foot from that rockered profile in the center of the board. It just really keeps you, afloat in those situations. Plus, you're sort of mitigating some of the risk when you're on your back foot. You're really able to just ply back, and that way, if you do hit something, you have sort of
Yeah.
a lot of time to
I think
preemptively moving.
I think that goes with your tree riding style as well, because your whole snowboard like technique or style, I feel like is suited or like has been um, dictated by the trees you ride, which is like
Totally.
a good thing for tree riding. So like, yeah, getting back, just that very like that surf mode snowboard tree riding style. Yeah, like what are you thinking of like, yeah, when you're going through that, because like even when I see you riding, it's yeah, I can tell that you've got the prime tree riding stance. How did you develop that? Where did that where did that come from? Because it's definitely an effective technique.
Well, nowadays I ride narrower stances just
Yeah.
because I find narrower stances are a little bit easier for getting like suspension out of your legs. You know, you get a lot of travel when you're going up and down and up and down and up and down. So it's sort of
Yeah.
easier to use the terrain when you have the ability to, use your legs as a suspension system. So I definitely ride a little bit of a, shorter stance. In general, I think that like so much of my technique in the trees just comes from this idea of like wanting to make the longest run possible. You know, you can imagine I'm from Ontario originally. In Ontario, we literally have like 2-minute runs. And when you would go there, as a kid, you would try to make those runs last as long as possible. So
Yeah.
it's like you're dipping off under the trees, you're going under the chairlift, you're popping out over onto another side, you're doing a little undulation side hit that then pops back off onto the groomer run. You're trying to make the run last as long as possible. So I feel like it's sort of the same idea when I'm in the trees. It's like I could take a straight line, or I could make this like very undulating long, sort of playground out of the trees. And that way it makes for like the longest possible run.
I guess that's a good way to save your energy as well, right? Because you're kind of picking not straight lines down, but you're kind of choosing the path of least resistance, but with maintaining the flow and with maintaining like a clean line where you're not having to really put a ton of effort into constantly like making 200 or 300 turns down the run. You're trying to like really read the terrain and you like ride it in somewhat of a flowy fashion where yeah you're not putting out a ton of effort, so you can get down like say here in Whistler to get down an entire run just in one go. That can be a lot of effort, right? So is that part of the strategy, is like choosing lines that where you can make it long but also effortless through the trees?
Yeah, exactly. You want to best use your energy, and you want to best displace the energy from your snowboard from your own momentum. So instead of having to do a lot of speed checks where you're just dumping speed and doing that thing that all the skiers hate, where us pesky snowboarders press sideways down the mountain and just scrape
Yeah.
all the snow off of the hill. Instead of doing all those speed checks, I like to use the terrain as my speed check. So if I'm
Ah,
going too fast, I start to dip off horizontal, and then I'll go back up the hill to reduce some of that speed. Then I make the turn back down the mountain, and I utilize sort of that carrying speed to always keep me moving, keep me pumping, but I'm not going at like maximum, velocity in a straight line down the mountain. And
yeah,
that makes for a much longer run.
yeah, it's a good technique. Like I haven't quite thought of it in that same way, but like yeah, as you're going down, there's always like those like a side bank or like a larger mound or even like a flat area where you can aim your board towards that to help you kill some speed and kind of maybe even give your legs a break before like dipping into some of the more high speed and steeper areas. So it's like, yeah, really using the terrain to manage your speed, to be in control, to slow yourself down, and to save your energy. So that's a pretty interesting technique there.
Mhm.
So among like yeah, because that was super early season, and then as we did start to get more snow and things did start to fill in. Yeah, what are your some of your favorite spots on Whistler Blackcomb, or like not specifically spots or just like types of trees that you like to ride? Like what makes a premium tree run in your opinion?
Well, there's a couple of different things, right? Like there's part of me that really enjoys adventure snowboarding. And that's when you'll see like videos like Chris put out one recently where we're literally powering through the thicket of the bush. And like we're not actually going that fast. We're more like clambering from one tree to the next, just like trying to burst through a certain area, figure out where we're going. You know, you come out onto like a creek, for an example. So I kind of like that when you're like, I don't really know where I'm going. We're sort of spreading a new track, or we're pushing a new track. We're gonna end up, maybe in like an awesome powder field. So that's one type of tree riding. But I
Yeah.
think like ultimately the kind of tree riding that I'm looking for is where they're evenly spaced enough that you can, keep a pace going, where you can sort of make a dance out of your snowboarding, where you can do a lot of, what they would call pumping in the world of skateboarding. You can use the moguls, you can use the trees, you can use those undulations to really keep your momentum. So those are my favorite, and I don't like things that are too steep. I put up with steep stuff, but ultimately I prefer the more mid-range vector of riding, because it allows you to sort of maneuver your board around more and pick your line. In addition to that, I mean, snow quality really plays a factor. You can imagine when the snow is really light, you go flying through those trees. It's a lot faster, and you might not have the same amount of time to make those harebrained decisions in between two trees. Versus, in late season, a lot of the time you're dealing with that mashed potato-y snow that's a lot wetter. It has more water in it. It's heavier. And I actually like that snow better, because even though you're moving slower, you can make more specific, detailed, harebrained decisions with your turns. So you can go like really, really complex. You can go really, what's the word I'm looking for? Intricate. You can make really intricate lines.
Nice. Oh, sick, man. Yeah. I guess like here in Whistler, we have like a bit of everything. We've got some mellow tree runs, we've got some tight trees, we've got some spaced ones. There's like, I know over in Crystal, I think it's CBD trees they're called. There's some sections that are very steep, and on some of those steeper sections of trees, I think the snow kind of gets like sloughed off, or rode out sooner than other places because it's so steep. So I think like from riding with you, I know that there's a few places that match that criteria of kind of the good pitch, like good consistent pitch, not too steep, not too flat, combined with some space to create that canvas to move your board around. And those like
I'm losing you. You're freezing up on me.
Oh no, how's your internet connection there?
Oh, there you are. Hey, sorry, what happened?
I'm sure it's just the
A
internet.
glitch in the matrix.
It's the internet's, yeah. Yeah, cool, man. But that's that's like good to know. I feel like that's like good advice out there for people too. When you're like when I used to teach snowboarding and I take people through the trees, it was always trying to find those tree runs that were like a bit spaced, but a good pitch where you can keep it flowing without too much speed, and having to do too many turns, because having to do like a ton of turns. But yeah, that's good to know. I guess like coming from Ontario, we both like learned to snowboard in Ontario with a tiny bit of tree riding. But for everyone out on the East Coast, I feel like there's not a lot of tree riding out east, right? So coming out west, like the trees and the alpine, those are definitely things that are special about out here. But when you're riding out east in Ontario, do you have any like stories or favorite spots that you can remember from when you were an East Coast rider?
Well, it's funny because there's so much more regulation. There's more rules out east. So there were spots that you would go to ride. I don't want to name specific resorts, but they would actually stop you from riding off in the trees. They'd be like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be off there. We'll confiscate your day pass for riding off piste." Other portions out east, they don't mind you going off of off piste, but it's sort of very thin. It's like there's mud, there's gaps in between the snow. It's not as easy to sort of make those lines. Sometimes you can come across like a half bike path or something, and you can make something work. Like at Blue Mountain, there used to be like a creek gap that you could go over, but yeah, for the most part, there's not as much of that. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a special factor out here. Just the very nature of snowboarding out west is that, you know, you're able to go way more off piste, into the trees, into the woods. It's way more make your own adventure.
Do you think out east, the thing that makes tree riding less accessible is it that the trees are more like the forests are more dense, or is it that there's just not as much snow, or is it a factor of like both?
It's probably a little bit of both. It's like the forests aren't as tall, you know.
Right.
Here in BC, it's like there's so much more volume to the forest. There's
Right.
more like actual space in between the trees
Yeah.
versus there it's way more dense. So it's hard to find areas that are cut in a manner which you could actually go and snowboard through. You
Yeah.
know.
I remember one time going to Blue Mountain on a school trip, and they had like gladed runs. Like the only runs that were for tree riding were the ones that were actually they went through and cut down the trees and left them spaced out enough. But then the issue with that was just these like massive moguls that got created because like just everyone would ride there. So you
Yeah.
just have like basically a mogul field through the trees. Did you have a do you remember those back east?
Oh yeah, I remember all kinds of mogully, icy conditions.
Nice.
Pardon
Bless
me.
you.
Sorry, it's just dusty in here.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I guess the whole concept out there is that they're trying to like artificially make a tree run. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, here's this tree run that we've cut for you, and we've designated a tree run. Versus when you come out here, a tree run is truly like you're just wandering, you know, you're bored through the forest.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends.
Yeah. I remember yeah, for me, the the best, like I can remember like my first couple POW days like out east, which were, just I'm sure my board was still touching the bottom, but like that feeling of fresh snow. And it wasn't a run, but there was kind of like an out of bounds area where you could, you'd hike for like 20 minutes to get to this area where I think it was like where they had cut out some trees for a power line, and then you could ride that, and it was maybe only like I don't know, it was like 100 yards or 100 meters, say, and but that one run of just like a few dips and a few banks and maybe going around a few trees, it would only last maybe 30 seconds or a minute, but that experience of having, going out into like just yeah, more going into nature and getting off of the groomed runs was such a different thing. And I can remember doing it all the time. Every time I had, a friend come ride with me at my local resort, or if I was teaching lessons at the time too, whenever I had the opportunity, taking somebody over there. And but yeah, putting 20 or 30 minutes of effort in just for that like 30 seconds of unique feeling. Was that something, that kind of experience, something that drew you out west to like chase more of those types of feelings?
Yeah, well, totally, man. It's like, you know, anytime where you have to put in that little bit of effort to get where you want to be, it makes it feel even more special, right? Like it makes it, you know, more memorable in your head. Anytime you have to hike for anything, it like adds a slight amount of glory into the
Yeah.
mix, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I never really experienced the like full on forested snowboarding that you'd find out here out west back
Yeah.
east. I just knew that like I had a concept that it existed. So ultimately I had seen it in like videos, I had seen that kind of snow in magazines. And so I was like, I just got to get out there and learn that world of snowboarding. And you know,
Right.
it's such a weird concept because like many people have said, it's like learning how to snowboard all over again,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a completely different thing learning how to ride your snowboard technically through the trees in powder versus, you know,
Yeah.
groomer carving.
Yeah, like you were saying, like learning to like get onto the back foot for the first time, learning to like read the terrain differently so that you're not making so many turns, and using the terrain more. So all those things are, even if you've snowboarded for 10 years on groomers, it's a couple of years of progression to learn how to ride that style all over again.
Yeah, it's way more surf based. It's way more intrinsic. There's an element to it where you feel like you're way more connected to nature and to the experience. Because when you're snowboarding on groomed runs, you're very aware that the groomed run has been made by, a man-made um, plan, right? Like
Yeah,
it's like a plan to have made that run there. You
yeah,
can tell that the machine has made that groomed run. Versus when you're in the trees, like when you're in on a powder day and the
yeah,
tracks haven't been made yet, and you're looking at virgin snow, and you're in the forest. Sometimes I get this sensation that like it doesn't. You have no concept of what time it is. Like it could be 10,000 years in the past or in the future. It could be the 1700s or the 1400s, and you'd have no way of knowing. Like it's all just the forest. And I think that like that's like a big part of it. Like
yeah,
when you're immersed in nature and there's no trails, there's no tracks. It's a powder day. You can
yeah,
go any which way that you want to go, and it's like this very simplistic form of travel. Like it's even simpler than like horseback, right? Like a horse is a very complex thing versus like standing on a snowboard and using just like gravity and
yeah.
centrifugal force and friction and the very nature of you know
Well,
of everything.
it's kind of like being on a hike through the forest just to enjoy, like, yeah, enjoy the nature, and then you're adding in like the thrill of sliding down a mountain on a piece of wood. So it's such an yeah, it's such an interesting combination of this like semi-dangerous, activity mixed with the appreciation for nature.
Yeah,
So
it just like boggles my mind though, like how close you can get to nature with it, and like
yeah,
how there's nothing motorized about it, for example. Like you
yeah,
could go out into nature like in your car, you could go driving, for example, but you still have to like accept the fact that like, there's this technological, thing underneath you as far as a car is concerned. Versus
yeah,
like a snowboard, there's something so simplistic of the idea of like I'm just riding this plank of wood and all I'm using is like balance and gravity, and I'm somehow able to, transport myself through a 3D landscape like a
mhm,
forest. And like there's something like truly magical about especially when you're like looking through a run and you can't see any sign of a man-made object. You can't see a groomed run. You can't see any, chairlift
or
cables.
other
You can't see anything
or,
like that. It's
or other people.
or other people. Yeah, and it's like a very intrinsic experience. It's like how we all find like a captivating nature of watching a fire. There's something about being in the woods in nature, like out alone, and just experiencing that, and it's definitely like a spiritual thing.
Well, it's kind of like the experience of, say, swimming in your local public pool compared to like swimming across a lake, like, and just in the middle of nowhere. It's like swimming across a lake is like, yeah, you have a different, it's not even like the same thing. Like you're still swimming, but the experience is totally different. So I guess there's maybe some similarities there between a groomed run and riding in the trees. It's like the groomed run is kind of like, yeah, this public swimming pool. There's the lanes, there's the safety people, you've got other swimmers, and there's even kind of like, yeah, like a border almost as well. Whereas when you're out in a lake, you're just, that's nature. And yeah, kind of that merging of yourself and nature and the activity. So kind
Hmm.
of interesting stuff how all this ties together. But while we're on the topic of like tree riding and stuff too, I guess we should mention some safety stuff because yeah, there's also that inherent danger in tree riding as well. Do you have any? I know that this season you got the helmet. How's the
Yeah.
helmet working? How's the helmet working out?
It's working out, bud. It's
Nice.
nice because the one that I got is very lightweight, so I
Yeah.
don't overly notice it too much. I have a hard time remembering to do it up, but I'm working on that. But yeah, ultimately, like I played around with a bunch of different fitting systems. Sometimes I would use a hat underneath. Sometimes I used the sort of like hybrid beanie that it came with. I think ultimately I was most happy with wearing a beanie underneath. But yeah, man, I mean, riding in the trees, it has its own realm of like safety issues. I mean, other than, obviously hitting a tree,
Yeah.
you have to be careful about tree wells.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of comes back to, the type of snow that you're experiencing. If it's shallow snow and it's late season or early season, it's not as big of a deal. But when we get those massive dumps in January, when there's a lot of snow buildup, you do have to be careful about tree wells. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, tree wells are those displacements of snow underneath the actual tree, where the tree has acted like an umbrella, so snow hasn't built up around the actual base of the tree, and therefore it's created a hole or a well in the snow. And if you fall into those head first, it can be very difficult to pry yourself back out.
Yeah, definitely. Like here in Whistler, I guess like over the years, we always hear about cases of people dying in tree wells. So that's like a huge thing to look out for. And I guess the best way to, you can obviously, first of all, avoid them, but by riding with other people, riding with the crew. And when you're riding with friends, yeah, like watching your friends so that if somebody does have a fall, somebody's right there to help out. And yeah, and then the helmet, I think that's like number one. I'm stoked that you got the helmet, man. Which helmet did you get?
I got the Smith Code.
Ah, nice. I
Mhm.
recently picked up the Smith Maze.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Maze and the Code are built off of the same like outer frame shell. The
cool.
Code is just lighter because it has choroid in it, and it has a tightening system on the back.
Nice. Okay, I
Yeah,
like that. And
yeah,
I guess the other thing with tree riding too, like, the tree wells definitely are scary, and yeah, ride with friends. Having the tree call, you don't have
yeah.
to do it
The
full. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so
yeah,
that you can keep an ear on your friend too. So yeah, there's the call, and then also just like knowing where you're going too as well. Like, because when you go up into Kybers and places like that, there's some tree runs here in Worcester Blackcomb that are a bit
Harry.
um, they're a bit hairy, and they're not like even runs that I've been down hundreds of times. Say like over around Crystal Chair. There's still those tree runs where you don't exactly know where the cliff bands are, or sometimes the terrain changes because of the buildup of snow, so things feel differently. So yeah, I guess like when you were first riding in Whistler, did you have somebody showing you the spots, or did you kind of explore them on your own?
Yeah, it's like a lot of the time, I think like a lot of people experience this, but when you get to Whistler, it's sort of like you get yourself involved in a crowd of people that have been here longer, and then they all want to show you the best spots. And even though they may not show you the exact run that you deem the best, they sort of will show you the area. So, like, for example, I was never specifically shown Kybers, but I was shown Million Dollar Ridge, which is like a similar area, and I used that sort of firsthand knowledge from that one run to then, start mapping my way through Kybers, which is farther and farther and farther left.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, part of it's experience, part of it's you know, trying to go where there's trails already, part of it's knowing where you're going and following other people. Other
yeah,
parts of it are just like practice, practice, practice. And the other thing that I was going to say about, overall safety is just mitigating your risk, understanding that like, hey, I'm in an area where I'm not 100% familiar. I'm not going to ride 100%.
yeah,
There's lots of times where I'm like, whoa, I'm going to bring this back to like 70% just so that I'm not flying into a tree. Because if I were going to really unleash, my speed or whatever, I'd really be upping the risk factor, especially if I'm by myself. So a
yeah.
lot of the time I'm just like, oh, boys, it's all the same oat bag. Like you place, I'll win, or you win, I'll place. It's all the same oat bag, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Have you had any close calls in the trees, or any times where you've come across emergencies or anything like that? because yeah, like you were saying, I think the number one thing is like gauging the risk and then trying to minimize that as much as possible. But I know that sometimes accidents happen and things go wrong. Have you been through any of that stuff?
Yeah, so I actually found a guy out in Kybers with a broken leg.
Wow.
And ultimately, we had to airlift him out with a helicopter. They weren't even able to land the helicopter. They had to like wire down the helicopter ropes to like airlift this guy out. And it was a pretty hairy situation because Kybers in general, the name Khyber Pass is such a large area that
Yeah.
it's hard to determine exactly where you are in there, and it's entirely out of bounds. So the negative situation or the negative part of that was even to have people come and rescue him. I think that guy's helicopter ride was going to cost him $3,000 because it wasn't covered under the insurance policy of Whistler Blackcomb.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a very hairy situation. You know, it was about keeping this guy warm as he went into shock. We had to make sure that we took off any spare garments of clothing to put it on him. We had to try to use our smartphones to determine our exact GPS coordinates so that we could, you know, tell them exactly where to come and find us.
Yeah.
We had to call various, you know, we had to call the emergency services. We had to cross-reference all of our phone numbers because there were a few of us together at this point.
Wow.
Um, and then we had to make enough noise for about an hour or so. We had to be like yelling and making a beacon noise so that they knew where to come, like where to look, where to find us, because it's such a big forested area. So, you know, we're all yelling and, you know, trying to make as much noise as possible so that they could come and find this poor dude who, and he had broken his leg. He had gone down, like you were saying, it was an area that he was familiar with, but every time that he had gone down there prior, there had been more snow build, and so it
Yeah.
had been easier for him to land. Versus in this particular situation, it was still early season, and he went off of like a 12-foot sort of gap, and yeah, just crushed his back foot.
Oh, scary. So
Yeah,
in the end, they got him out though, like
yeah.
kind of.
No, in the end, we had two very nice, you know, ski patrol safety people that came out that totally handled the situation. And once they were there, we all felt way better about it. And they actually brought some laughing gas for the poor gentleman because he was in so much pain.
Wow. Oh, crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, it's a good warning for, yeah, to kind of mitigate that risk because, yeah, there's always a few people every season in the trees that get seriously injured or die as well. And it's good. Yeah, just take all those precautions, helmet, riding with a friend, knowing where you're going, and yeah, tuning down your riding when you need to as well. But yeah, good stuff, man. What about so yeah, lots of stuff here in Whistler, and then I think, but something that maybe was possibly life changing was that trip to Japan we did, and I feel like we can't talk about tree riding without talking about Japan because that's maybe the tree riding capital of the world, and your very first trip there. So man, what was it? What was it like? Your first like run or first like experience coming? Like, what thoughts were entering your head when you first had a few laps under your feet in Japan?
Oh, it was a completely different experience than here in Whistler because,
Yeah.
like I was saying, the snow here in Whistler is very damp. It carries
Yeah.
some wetness to it. So
Yeah.
you know, the snow here is heavier, and therefore it has more compression underfoot. There's all like more dampening, more of
Yeah.
a suspension system happens with the snow that we have here. Versus the snow that's out in Japan, it's so light, it's so
Yeah.
feather light that you're flying through it, you're hurtling through this snow. So
Yeah.
it's a completely different feel because it doesn't slow you down as much. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more speed that you're sort of having to mitigate. And there's a lot more unknowns because every time you make a turn, you're throwing up a ton of snow into your face. You
How
know,
did
there were
that?
a couple of runs that I was doing, and every slash, every turn, I was just barreling up waves of snow up into my face and like totally blocking my sight of vision.
Yeah.
So I couldn't see where I was going.
So what was going through your mind as like you were going through these experiences of tree riding in Japan?
I was well, the first day was like about mitigating my goggle fog, because I
Oh
was just like,
yeah.
oh my god, there's so much snow in my face. Like taking off my goggles at all is, causing me more fogging. I was like just like so pissed off at my own goggles, because I was like, I should have brought like 3 lenses. I think from
Oh
that point
yeah.
on, I started bringing like 3 or 4 like lenses with me every day, just because I
Nice.
was working so hard. But in
Yeah.
general, man, that snow is yeah, life changing. It's
Wow.
absolutely, it's like flying. It's like flying through a cloud. Um, yeah, like it's almost it's hard to like describe, because in some cases you're in snow that's like waist deep, but it's moving around you with such ease. It's almost like you're like a bubble moving through water.
Yeah.
You're just displacing the snow. Another crazy thing about it is, like, here in Whistler, you make a definitive trail behind you, where it's like a packed out trail that you've left behind. Versus in Japan, there's so much snow that it almost just like stitches back together behind you, and you're not
Yeah.
even certain that you left that trail there.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, man. Yeah. I feel like yeah, that was I was super happy to have you guys like, because as soon as we got there, we had an incredible pow day just right from the start. Um, did you feel like we were kind of throwing you guys into the deep end, because like like me and TJ and some of the other guys, we had been there the year before, right? So we knew what we were getting into, where we were going. But I feel like for you and Chris, and for the first timers in Japan, were you feeling kind of like overwhelmed, or like what were you thinking about the unknown, because you guys didn't really know what where that was leading or where we were going? How was that part of it?
Oh yeah, it's always a weird experience to be out of my element,
Right.
like I'm so used to like being in my world, the world
Yeah.
of Andreas, over here. I'm king over here, king of Kybers. So just feel like on the seat of my pants, and like, trying to follow you guys, and dealing with all the snow flying in my face. It was definitely like a bit of a totally different experience. And it was also hard to like mitigate like how much to worry about, the bamboo sticking up. How much is that going to affect my, if I hit the bamboo, is it going to catch me up, or am I going to go flying, or is it fine? Like for the
Yeah.
most part, you could run right over the bamboo, and it
Yeah.
really didn't affect you too much. Like I didn't ever like get caught up in it too much. So it was kind of weird. It was a totally different experience. Not to mention that the tree riding in general is just different, because of the difference between deciduous trees and what's the other type?
Coniferous.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's just like here in Whistler, there's still, like the trees all have their foliage on them still,
Yeah.
versus out there, all the trees are like barren. So it's almost like you've got more volume, or you've got more depth to those trees.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely different. Just the terrain's different. The trees are different in terms of like the spacing, but also, yeah, they're like the thinner, where like Niseko, the trees are much thinner. So and with less like branches, and like, yeah, like the evergreen style trees to avoid. So it's yeah, it's a whole different experience. And because they had like a shallow season in Japan this year, even though there's lots of snow when we got there, there hadn't been much snowfall before all those bamboo shoots, or yeah, bamboo sticking up. But then also, I guess like the layout of the terrain was much, I guess, gentler too, like a less of a pitch, right? So you can kind of open it up a little bit more. And when I was talking to Chris about this too, he kind of thought that like here in Whistler, a lot of snowboarders kind of get funneled into the same place, where in Japan you can just spread out and go in any different direction pretty much for most of the runs. So it's definitely like kind of like leaves you up to like your own, like just a much more bigger variety of where you want to go to. Did you find that? Yeah, did you like that, or was it just different? Or yeah, what do you think of? Did you have to kind of adapt your riding a bit to the solid terrain out there?
Well, I mean, obviously the mountains here in Whistler are slightly bigger. So I mean, you've got more vertical going on, which sort of leads to having yourself led to, different spots, just to sort of figure out what lift you're going to end up at. In general, I felt like it was more open-ended in Japan. But having said that, we did do a lot of hiking too. Like in Hanazono, we did either a lot of traversing or we did like a hike to the top pretty much every time we wanted to access that, that really good snow that was on the far left. So, I mean, it kind of depends. I felt like Japan also had sort of more of like the same consistency of snow more throughout, just because there's less of a dip or change in vertical. Versus here in Whistler, you can have like completely different styles of winter happening between the top and the bottom.
Yeah, I guess, smaller mountains, less vertical. So once you got to the mountain, like the way it was at the bottom was pretty close to the way it was at the top. I guess like some areas, like the higher you go, there would be more and more snow. But like, the temperature was kind of similar. And when we were out there, you were kind of like toying with the idea of going to Japan for a season. Do you think that's a prospect still?
Maybe not next season, but definitely in the future. Like I was totally thinking to myself, I always sort of think in this like in this mentality or in this modality of like, well, you say you love snowboarding. How much do you really love snowboarding? Do you love snowboarding as much as you say you love snowboarding? Because if you do, then like you don't really have a reason not to live out here. Because the snowboarding is just so good. It's not even like the mountains are that much better than Whistler. They're, similar in overall quality. It's just the snow. The snow is so much more reliable, consistent, lightweight. And then the other thing about it there is there's just not as much density of tourist population. So it's like it's much more easy to just get up and on the lift and, But I mean, part of that could have been considering the fact that, we were there in what they were considering one of their worst seasons. So maybe, I mean, it wasn't as busy as it would have been normally. But even then, I mean, it was just amazing, especially in Rizutsu, how we could just go up and down and up and down and up and down on a powder day and just experience so many good runs with direct access back to the lifts.
Yeah. So what would you say was your best day of tree riding while you were there? Because I know there's a few that stand out in my mind from just like seeing you and talking to you out there. Like I have an idea, but what do you think was your best day out in tree riding in Japan, and like what made it the best one?
Well, there were two that I thought that were like the really ones that stood out. One was our day in Hanazono, where we had like that, almost meter of snowfall. That was almost like the best for like the absolute spectacle of it. It was like, oh my God, I'm in, waist deep powder. Like, the footage that I got from that day was like, holy crap, I've never seen someone in that kind of deep powder before. But I think the actual day that I enjoyed the most was the powder day at Rizutsu, which was our second day in Rizutsu. And it was just phenomenal in the sense that, like I said, you could go up and down so many times because there's direct lift access at the bottom of pretty much every run. But in between every chairlift was sort of a forested area that was, totally untouched, and tons of blower powder snow to just be had. So I remember that day, I think I just went hard all day long. Like
that's like the perfect type of terrain too for you for just doing those like top to bottom laps, right? Were you just going top to bottom without stopping, or were you
pretty much trying to get as much continuous footage as possible.
Nice.
Those are the lines that look the best, the ones that you don't stop.
Nice. What board do you think worked best for you out in Japan, and like what power boards like stand out in your mind from the season?
Well, the two boards that I think I enjoyed the most out there were the Mind Expander by Jones, and then the Karua shaped Dart. The Dart is such a fantastic board for powder. The Dart feels like a missile. It's just extremely turny. It flies through the snow. It really wants to pierce through the terrain, and it's extremely agile. And then having a big swallowtail on it is nice because you can really lean back onto it and make, instead of having to like do a speed check, your speed check is almost happening by planing the back of the board into the snow so much. So you have that extra time to, make a turn or make a decision on which line you're going to take.
Yeah.
And then the Mind Expander is just like a really nice sort of boaty surf inspired feel. I like the fact that it still has a lot of side cut radius to it. I like the fact that it still has a tail on it, so that tail lands jumps well. Yeah, those are the two boards that I mainly rode while I was out there.
How do you think the Mind Expander compares to the LibTech Orca?
I think that they're both like really good powder boards. I feel like the Orca is like more of a versatile all-rounder category board. So the Orca is like maybe a little bit more all mountain versus when you're looking at the Mind Expander is slightly more powder specific. So it
Okay.
definitely excels when there's deeper snow
Is it,
versus the Orca you can ride on hardpack, like when we were in Revelstoke and
yeah.
there wasn't a ton of fresh powder, I was still able to take my Orca and rail some hard arcing, speedy, fast turns on groomered runs because
Yeah.
you can really feel that aggressive magnet traction.
Yeah.
Versus, yeah, the Mind Expander being a flat board, it's a little bit surfier. So it's
Does it have more? Would you say like the rocker zone from, say, I don't know where the rocker starts on that board, but does it kind of really raise out towards the nose, making it more powder specific?
Yeah, exactly. It's more like powder oriented. It's more surf inspired because there's no camber at all anywhere under the feet. It's up to you to make that board comply into a turn. So
Okay.
there's still a lot of radius on that board, but
Yeah.
for you to get it to carve as nicely as like a regular snowboard, you really have to be specific with your edges. You have to really be like, you have to work your edges more to get it into that carve versus a cambered snowboard. It's easier to just naturally get that board into turn.
Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, what do you think just in general across boards? Like, what are some qualities that you look for in a snowboard that make it good for the trees?
Well, it's like I like to have some taper, which means that the front shovel is wider than the tail.
Yeah.
I like to have a rockered shovel, which means that front shovel is lifted up like a rocking chair. The contact point is farther back. I look for some setback in the board, meaning that there's more shovel than there is tail. There's more front to the board or nose to the board than there is to the back end of the board.
Yeah.
And
And
I look for either.
that allows it to kind of like float, but also to get that tail around quicker too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get that tail around quicker and get the tail to sink and get the nose to float. And then, yeah, I either look for like a camber to rockered profile, so like camber in the back with a rockered shovel in the front, or like a flat to a big rockered shovel in the front, which is more surfy feeling. It's easier to make like really quick harebrained decisions when you're making tight treed turns.
Yeah.
Or a board like the Orca, for example, that's a hybrid cross camber contour where you've got rocker between the feet, which really helps you initiate a turn, really helps you pivot the board, but then there's still cambered zones underneath the feet. So I guess like ultimately, I think, if someone was going to ask me, I'd be like, well, what are you buying the board for? If you're buying the board specifically for powder, specifically for trees, go with the Mind Expander because that board's going to feel a little bit more surf inspired. It's more powder specific versus if you're saying like, hey man, I want a board that works both well on great powder days and on days where I'm just going to ride the board on hardpack, I would say buy the Orca because the Orca is a little bit more versatile for hard pack or pieced conditions.
Nice. Cool. Awesome, man. Yeah, good
Have
knowledge.
you seen the graphics for next year's Mind Expander or for next year's Orca yet?
I've seen the Orca. Yeah, it's kind of like the top view.
Yeah,
of
top down, as if you were like
whale.
riding it.
Yeah, like you're riding a whale. That's pretty cool. I haven't seen the Mind Expander though. What is it? So in the past, it's kind of been that like red and black, almost camo-y.
Yeah, so they've gone like it's always sort of been like a tie-dye.
Yeah, tie-dye.
Tie-dye look. They've really just like upped the tie-dye graphic. So the tie-dye graphic is like really accentuated. And I know that next year the Orca is moving to their horsepower construction, which is more basalt. So it's
Okay.
going to be slightly lighter, a little bit more
Oh,
snappy.
wow. I don't know what to do. I don't know. I kind of want to try something different. Well, I sent my Orca in for warranty, so I guess they're going to send me back a 21, maybe.
Yeah, no, I've seen that your warranty was cleared. It went through. So you're going to get probably just a store credit to buy another Orca if you want.
Oh, sweet.
But yeah, I'm excited as well. There's a board coming out. I think it's called the GNU Gremlin. And it's the same idea, you know, like short, wide, stunted.
Yeah.
It's got like a big, like planky, shovelly nose.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gremlin. Sounds pretty cool. Do you want to do a few questions from the live chat?
Sure.
I can read them to you. Yeah, shout out to everyone for hanging out with us, for watching. Yeah, we've got tons of questions, tons of comments. Thank you guys all for hanging out with us. If you guys haven't yet, definitely like this video, subscribe here to Snowboard Pro Camp, and then after the video, go subscribe to Andreas Schubert. But yeah, we got Tim Lee with the super chat question. Thanks for the support, Tim. He says, I know you recommend the Y for intermediate riders, but how hard will it be for a mid-intermediate rider to use / turn the optimistic with stiff bindings? What is the Y? Is that a yes board, the Y?
Yeah, so Yes makes these boards. One's called the Optimistic, which is a classic in their lineup, and it's very aggressive and it's very stiff, and it's designed almost with like a border cross tail and then like a big rockered shovel in the front, and it's really good for powder and it's really good for carving. It's a very aggressive board. So this year they made a toned down version of it called the Y, which is all blue, same shape, but a softer overall flex. And they added a slight amount of rocker in the tip to make it easier to initiate a turn. So the concept was, by making the Y, you now have a board that's like the Optimistic, but it's more open-ended for the non-aggressive rider. I really do feel like the Optimistic, it's a lot of board for somebody who's inexperienced. It's an advanced level snowboard. So I would say if you're not, higher end intermediate, you probably want to stay back to the Y, just because the Y, having a softer flex, it does a little bit more of the work for you at lower speeds, versus the Optimistic, it's going to really perform once you're going fast.
Yeah. I feel like that's good advice. Yeah, it's like you want to almost stick with boards that are comparable to your riding ability, because sometimes you go for, like, I've even been on like really advanced level boards, and I feel like it's so much to handle, and it becomes more of an even more specific type of riding situation that you use those like high advanced qualities for. So yeah, it's hard to give exact advice without watching somebody ride, but I feel like, yeah, if you're an intermediate rider, stick with the intermediate version board. But yeah,
it's just going to be more open-ended for you.
Yeah, more versatile. Yeah. Engine with the super chat says, Andreas for mayor. Yeah, dude, when are you gonna run for mayor of Whistler?
Oh man, dude. I can't even run my own life well. I don't know how I'd run everyone else's life.
Well, maybe once you've mastered, you become the master of your own domain, then you can, once you got your, how do I say that differently? Once you got your own horses in a row, is that a saying?
Yeah.
I think maybe your retirement plan, once you've retired from your professional snowboard YouTuber career, I could see you getting into like something into politics. By then it's probably going to be.
The first thing I would decree is night riding. We would have to have night riding here.
Yeah, see, if you run on that platform, you would definitely be voted the mayor of Whistler. And by that time too, it'll all be online. It'll all be digital. It'll just be like, you'll already have all the clout from the snowboard videos. So yeah, you'll be a shoo-in for winning the election, the mayor of Whistler. Wayne McKenzie with the super chat. thanks for the support, man. It says, for the spiritual ride. Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's what true riding is all about. Getting connected with your inner spirit, whatever you want to call it.
With your inner time traveler, because that way, when you're in those trees, you have no idea what time it is.
Yep.
When it is.
Yeah. Yep. You travel through time. Effective Edge with the super chat says, "Hi Andreas, can you give your comparison on the Orca versus the Mind Expander?" Oh wow. What is your preferred tree board? I guess we kind of answered it, but you can maybe give the quick recap.
Yeah, the recap is that the Mind Expander is probably the better powder specific or tree specific or surf specific style, versus the Orca is more like an all-rounder versatile category. I would say that the Orca handles powder and carving, so it's a little bit better for piste or for riding on groomed runs as well as riding powder, versus when you're moving to the Mind Expander, you're getting into a more surf inspired shape, and it's going to excel more specifically in powder and trees, but it's not as good on groomed runs or on piste. It doesn't feel as stable.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, do you think the Orca feels more stable riding it like at high speeds versus the Mind Expanders maybe excels more just like with that cruise mode through the trees, not like high speeds, but just like at an enjoyable pace?
Yeah, in general, I think any boards that have sort of like a more aggressive magnet traction, where there's like 5-point magnet traction or 7-point magnet traction, I think that when you lay in those edges, naturally, because there's more contact points, they slow you down slightly. And that slowing down feeling sort of gives you more control versus, yeah, the Mind Expander not having any cambered zones at all is a much looser feeling snowboard and therefore is sketchier at higher speeds. So you have to be a little bit more, finesse based when you're riding a board like that at high speeds.
Nice. Another super chat from Engen says, Andreas Schubert, the only way to make sense out of POW is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to fight the powder, you want to move with the powder, right?
Yeah.
It's, I think, the same analogy with the mountain. You don't want to fight the mountain, you want to move in this dance with the mountain. You want that whole thing to come together into a beautiful orchestration of suspension, of, the human body moving with nature, to create this hybridization, this, form of true, true artistic expression, True expression happens with snowboarding.
Nice. Chuck Van with the super chat says, Andreas Schubert, I have found that if you love the POW will love you back.
It's very true. Yeah, it's like that old saying, don't test the mountain or the mountain will test you back, or don't push the mountain or the mountain will push you back. If you love the powder will love you back.
Definitely. Few shout outs here to some of the people watching. El Stacker, we got Quinn, Jackson, Ray Dell, B-Boy Saint, Glam Girl 123. Do you even nature bro? I wonder what he has to say. Oh, he's talking to somebody else. But yeah, share the Chuck Van to all these, for everyone tuning in. Yeah, let's see if we have another question. Oh man. Blink says, on the topic of boards, what about the Slush Slasher?
The Capita Slush Slasher.
Capita Slush Slasher, yeah. What do you think of that? Have you ridden that board?
I have ridden that board actually, and it's a very popular board for powder, and a lot of people really like it because it's sort of got like a very unique shape to it, and it's moderately priced. It's not overly expensive. A lot of boards that you see in that category are in like the mid 700 range, and I think that board's only in like the mid 400 range. I personally, I don't love that board. The reason why is it doesn't have a ton of side cut.
Yeah.
So I find that it like bursts through powder well, but
In
it
a
doesn't
straight
have like a
line?
lot. Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of like turnability.
Yeah.
So it's not really my favorite powder board in that kind of range or in that category. I think if I were going to go to something in that sort of, range, I'd go to maybe like a K2 Cool Bean or Party Platter. But yeah, no, it's a cool board. TCAP, TCAP rides that board.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, Casey Willax's buddy,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean he kills it on that thing. So I mean, maybe part of it was I just didn't have the capability of riding it on an amazing powder day like he did in Japan. But overall, it's not one of my favorites.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't ridden it, but I feel like just I see some people that enjoy it, but it doesn't really have any of the specs that I really look for. What about some of the other Capita POW boards? The what's that line? The spring brake boards. Is there any spring brake boards that stand out? I've been looking at the POW Racer. I know that some of the snowboard shops have some sales on, and I was like very tempted to buy the Capita POW Racer. Have you ridden, or the spring brake? Have you ridden any of the spring brake boards?
I've ridden a few of them like in an earlier iteration, but I haven't ridden any of the modern ones at the
Okay.
moment. The one that I really want to try is the Nighthawk. That's the one
Oh
that's
yeah,
got that massive swallowtail.
yeah,
It looks like you could, pop off a life-size, like a jumbo-sized beer bottle cap or something. You could pop that thing off.
yeah.
I really want to try that one. I also really want to try the Tree Hunter. I think the Tree Hunter looks really dope. I
Yeah.
like the shovel design on that, how it's really wide and planky. It's almost like you could use it as a backcountry shovel.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, there's such a big story behind all of those boards with Corey Smith. He started making all of those experimental surf inspired shapes in his garage. And yeah, I mean, it was sort of Capita came together to do a collaboration with him to be like, hey, let's actually use our proper manufacturing facilities to make some of your harebrained crazy ideas.
Wow.
Um, so they're using their ultralight cores. They're super lightweight. They're thick where they need to be. They're light where they need to be. I'm really interested in trying them, but unfortunately, they're such a niche thing, and they're not as like common as a normal snowboard.
Well, if they're good boards, maybe we should start riding them more and try to make them more commonplace. I'm seeing more and more spring breaks pop up, and I've never been on one, but I've always been very tempted to check it out. So, yeah,
Yeah,
some
man.
point.
As I get older, I just want to try more and more unique shapes.
Yeah,
I'm like so sick and tired of riding popsicle stick snowboards. I want to ride, you know, I want to ride like
nice.
I want to ride like crazy tapered, powder shapes that are like
Yeah,
inspired by surfing or
yeah,
whatever, right?
yeah. What about have you seen some of the new Burton boards that are coming out next year? They've got all the different 3D tech in them, and they've also got the 3D tech that's like creating some, yeah, like those surfing inspired like concave bits in the base. And
Yeah, hydro channels,
wow,
hydrophobic channels, I guess you would call them. They're very similar to what you would see on a wakeboard. But yeah,
yeah,
it's 3D contouring down the sides of the board or under the base of the snowboard, very much like a wakeboard or a surfboard. The model that I'm particularly interested in is called the Deep Daze, and that's the one that has 5 different hydro channels in the back tail that are
wow.
designed to, I guess, create more surface area to give you really good float. But they're
Are
also
hydro
doing like,
are those
sorry.
hydro are those hydro channels gonna work the same way they would work with water with snow, or do you think like I'm a little bit skeptical that the snow's just gonna get stuck in that channel, and then it's gonna create these like dead zones in your board. Do you have any? I guess we're gonna have to like test them out and see how it goes, but it makes sense
I
for
think that it's
wakeboarding.
not going to work well on piste. I don't think that it's going to be a technology that's overly beneficial on a groomed run or on like a regular run. I think it's something that will come into play when you're in actual powder specific scenarios. So very much like the powder that we encountered in Japan, where
Yeah,
it's like really lightweight, easy to displace powder. I think
Yeah.
that's where that kind of technology is really going to work well.
Cool.
But yeah, they're doing it in a bunch of their different boards. They've got a 3D fish, they've got a deep
Yeah.
days, they've got another board I think called the double dog, and then they've got another one called the daily driver. But they're all using iterations of that 3D contouring, that 3D profiling. So it'll be very interesting to try it out.
Do you know if
That's definitely one of the things that I'm bummed about, not being able to, go to some of the demo days that were going to be later in the season, because
yeah,
obviously I would have gotten to try some of those boards,
yeah.
right around now.
Do you think any of those boards are any of those Burton boards going to be part of their like standard line, or are all those boards family tree boards?
They are all family tree boards, but there are
Okay.
some Kilroy 3D boards as well. And
Yeah.
Kilroy is their sort of own lineup within Burton. It's sort of like their pro team, their pro-am riders. So I
Cool.
mean, I guess most of it's within their family tree line, except for the stuff that's in their Kilroy lineup. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of just it's a building on the technology that Battalion has had for a long time with like triple base technology, or we actually started to see some of that 3D core profiling in the Super DOA last year, if you remember that board, how it had that like dip and concave in it. So
Yeah.
it's sort of a build on that. Furthermore, those hydro channels or hydroplane channels, they were actually they've been conceived on powder specific boards from Japan. So I actually saw the same technology in Moss snowboards, if you've
Oh,
ever
really?
seen the brand Moss.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, lots to look forward to next season. Before I let you go, man, like what's your plan for the next month? I know we can't snowboard. We're not doing what we usually do, but yeah, what's on your mind? What's the plan during quarantine?
Oh, well, it's there's a few things going on. I think, like I was saying before, I've still got a whole bunch of footage that's from earlier dates in the season. I
Yeah,
tried to film absolutely every day that I went snowboarding this year, so I still have a lot of backed up footage from even from before we went to Japan. So I've got footage from before we went to Japan. I still have footage from Japan. I still have some footage from after Japan. So I'm
nice.
editing through that. I'm putting out vlogs. They're just not like up to date vlogs. They're vlogs from, like a couple months ago.
Yeah,
But at least it leaves me to post something. And in the meantime, I'm, going out for a hike here and there.
nice.
There's only a couple of people that I'll actually go for a hike with, just because I'm trying to stay isolated. So it's like really only, someone like yourself or Chris that I'll even go for a hike with.
Yeah,
But yeah, just sort of, doing a few nature walks here and there to keep the lungs moving. And yeah, I don't know. Other than that, sort of looking into snowboard gear for next year, doing a little bit of artwork here and there, getting
nice.
back to some of my canvas painting roots,
Cool.
and yeah, listening to a bunch of music, hanging out.
Nice. Any music you'd recommend?
Ooh, oh my goodness, what a question. Um, yeah, do you remember the show Taxi?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Taxi had this like really jazzy theme song that's now been reworked. It's called
Oh
I
wow.
think it's called like Strongest of the Brave or something, or Strongest of the Strong. Anyway, somebody made this like remix of the original Taxi theme song. And yeah, it's a really cool riding song. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll try to. Is it on YouTube somewhere?
Yeah, no, it totally is. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put a link to it in the description after this for people to check out. But yeah, for everyone watching, check out Andreas's YouTube channel, linked in the description. And yeah, dude, thanks for coming on, hanging out, and talking to us.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks for chilling. It was great. I always
Yeah,
love talking about the trees, They're my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah. It's the best. I feel like we'll be going back to Japan for years to come. Maybe we'll be coming to visit you there.
Yeah,
But
really. I just gotta
yeah,
like move everything out there my whole life.
nice. Awesome. But yeah, shout out to everyone for watching and for hanging out in the chat with us. Thanks to everyone that dropped a super chat. Engine just dropped one more super chat. Says Kevin that SB Diamond Tail is a great board. What's the SB Diamond Tail?
SB Diamond Tail. I don't. Oh, is that one of the spring break boards?
We'll have to look into it. Yeah,
SB being spring break Diamond Tail.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that one.
Yeah.
And
again, I've never ridden it, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Chuck Van saying snowboarding is not a destination. It is the way. Wow.
Isn't that like a Mandalorian quote? That is the way.
I haven't seen that show yet. Possibly. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Yes. Again, check out Andreas' channel. Be safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time. See ya. Peace, everyone.
All right. See you guys. Peace out.